Small business is an important part of our city and how our economy works. And as a business owner, there are many parts and pieces that contribute to that success. Through this program, we hope to provide businesses with answers to questions that often come up in difficult situations. Welcome to the Business Toolkit. I'm Mandy Wallner with the Economic Development Department at the City of Richland, and joining us today is Cerise Peck, Crime Prevention Specialist with the Richland Police Department. Today's episode is about unwanted patrons in your business. What are the business owner's rights and how they should respond in tough situations? So thanks for joining us today, Cerise.
Thanks for having me.
So as a small business, if someone comes into your store shop and makes the staff feel uncomfortable, what course of action is best for them?
So what really needs to be discussed prior to that is your store policy. There are some legalities in the state of Washington that would dictate the store's policy and how they treat their customers. So knowing the store policy and what the business expectation is of the employee in that situation is usually the first step that you need to take.
So where would a person look for a resource to put those policies together?
So if you're looking for information on how to, begin writing a policy for especially a small business, I would certainly start with the internet, research the state of Washington laws. You could possibly reach out to a local attorney and see if they have any knowledge, or lean on, other businesses that are similar, maybe a BDI group or something like that.
That's great, thank you. What if the individual is being inappropriate with staff or customers?
So if they're ruffling feathers, again, you want to refer back to your store policy, because uncomfortable comments or stuff like that doesn't really justify a threat per se. So there isn't a crime that's being committed, but leaning on your store policy and knowing when you can ask somebody to leave is certainly the first step.
Okay. As a business, do they have the right to remove anyone that's loitering in their store without buying anything and causing others to feel uncomfortable?
Loitering, what's the definition of loitering? And if they're making others feel uncomfortable, again, that's subjective to an individual's feeling. So you really need to have a conversation with everybody in your staff and set a guideline for your expectations of your employees and what you're going to tolerate as a business. At the end of the day, you have the right to ask somebody to leave, but you have to have justification for why you're asking them to leave.
And who determines whether the justification is sound? I mean, as long as they have what they feel is a good reason, then is that good enough, or will that come back on them at some point?
You would have to definitely look up the Washington state law and make sure that you're not discriminating for any reason.
Sure.
Make sure that you're following those guidelines. When it turns into a threat situation or a safety issue, then of course, it turns into a legal issue or a criminal issue. But when you're talking about just statements made or a feeling that's subjective based on the employee, you certainly want to make sure that you are following the Washington state law and not discriminating or breaking any policies in that manner.
And maybe just kind of keep track of it. If it happens regularly, then
correct. Yeah, if you get a repeat person, then you might want to explore something that's like a trespass situation.
Okay, well that's great. So how does an employee of a business get someone to leave their store if, according to their policy, it's time and they've decided they have an appropriate reason? What's the most appropriate way to do that?
So if they've decided that it's time for the person to leave, there's two separate scenarios here. One is, within their policy, they've decided that this individual should no longer be in the store. Or it could be that they have, made a threat to the employee, or they've jeopardized the safety. So either way, the first step is you have to ask the individual to leave. You have to approach them and just nicely ask them, please leave. And after that, if they refuse to leave, is when you can call law enforcement.
Okay. So what types of calls do law enforcement typically respond to? Is there usually they're going to call them and maybe the dispatcher is going to give them some information, or is there a certain type of situation they would respond to versus not?
We respond to all calls for service.
Okay.
So whether it's a physical presence that we show up to or you get a phone call back, we respond to all calls for service. It might be a situation where it's a civil situation, but the expectation would still be that an officer call and explain, this type of incident is more of a civil incident. Here is, a couple of options that you could deal with it, but there should never be an instance where you don't hear from us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would anybody get in trouble for calling the police if it wasn't necessarily an appropriate situation?
No, we don't expect that all of our citizens are going to know the ins and outs of what is right and what is wrong. And at the end of the day, we want you to call us. That's what we're there for. So certainly there's no reason that anybody would get in trouble for calling us.
Okay, perfect. When is it more appropriate for someone to call 911 instead of a non-emergency number?
Great question. We get that all the time. So a 911 call is an in-progress situation. So if you have somebody that just stole from your store or is being combative, verbally abusive, refusing to leave, those are all 911 situations. If you show up to the location and then there's been a crime to the property, that's a 911 call. Something that would be more of a non-emergency, perhaps you have graffiti on the outside of your building, or somebody vandalized the building but not a break-in situation. Those types of things are a non-emergency call.
Because they're no longer present, and it's more of like a file report type of situation.
Yeah, more of a follow-up is kind of what non-emergency is for.
That's great, because I don't even think I knew that. So, what does it mean to trespass someone from your business? Because I know I've heard that kind of term thrown around once in a while, and I'm not really sure.
Yeah, so to trespass somebody means that they are not to come back.
Okay.
We see this a lot with major retailers. So if somebody is caught stealing at Target or Walmart or any of the bigger stores, they can be trespassed from the location.
Okay.
Same thing can be done for a small business. If you have somebody come in and they victimize you, they harass your employees, they're actually being a nuisance to the location. You've asked them to leave, officers have come and taken a police report. At that time, you can ask that they be trespassed from the location, which means they cannot come back.
Okay. And that's something that can be done the first time? It doesn't necessarily have to be a multiple offense type of a thing?
No, it can be done the first time. You can ask the officer that's there, I would like for this individual to be trespassed. They can facilitate that. And then if the individual comes back, then you would call 911 and let them know that the person has been trespassed and they're back at the location.
Okay, great. How long does it normally take for police to respond to a situation like that if they feel like there's somebody, let's say they're combative in the store?
So combative to us means that it's physical.
Perfect.
So that would be a 911 call, and that would be a priority call to us. And so to give you an actual time frame, I can't, because it just would depend on the location of the officer at the time that the call came out, but it would definitely be a priority call for us. If it was a shoplifting, that's a less priority, not that it doesn't matter, but a less priority than a physical altercation. So it just depends on what our staffing is, where our officers are, and what type of incident is happening.
That's great. What if a person leaves before the police arrive, but the call's been made?
Yeah, all the time. Somebody will grab something and go. So still a 911 call, because the person is most likely in the area. If you can get us the best description possible, and if they leave in a car, license plate is always wonderful. Make and model license plate, but certainly don't risk your safety or health to try to get that information. So you're going to call 911 and try to give us as much information as you can on the descriptions of the individual. So were they wearing a hat? Were they wearing a sweatshirt? Something that I always like to point out is shoes, because somebody can ditch a sweatshirt or a hat, but they're going to need their shoes.
Yeah.
So if they have, white shoes on or something like that, that's always a great descriptor. And then what direction did they go? So that we know, where to start looking.
And I think that's helpful for people to know, kind of in those situations, be prepared and try to observe as much as they can.
Yeah.
Kind of almost recording it for you for later. Thank you so much for all the valuable information for our businesses, and even for myself. It's always great to have that when I'm talking to businesses and welcoming people to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching today's episode. And if you need more information or have topic suggestions for future episodes, please contact info@richlandbusiness.com or myself at 509-942-7595. Thanks, and stay safe.